That vaccination station debacle over the weekend proves Colorado needs a better process with less chaos and less unnecessary stress. Our progress at controlling the spread of the virus around here has our state passing another encouraging milestone. Denver wrestles with the most basic of issues tonight. Who can live where? Imagine a beautiful open space in a beautiful city. Now, imagine what to do with it. Next. Denver's debates have a way of rippling out into other places, and the debate in the city tonight is a fierce one. It's about who can live where, what kinds of homes are allowed in what kinds of neighborhoods. Specifically, it's a city council debate about how many unrelated people can live together. Basically, it's a debate on whether denser types of housing and halfway houses and rehab centers can be added to residential neighborhoods. The proposal making a splash in the city tonight is likely to ripple out tomorrow, so our Marshall Zellinger dives in.
The simple part of the proposed amendments to Denver's group living code involves the number of unrelated people living together. Currently, it's 2 in single-family homes. In Aurora, Golden, and Westminster, the limit is 4. Parker and Lakewood, it's 5, which is what Denver's proposed change would be. 5 unrelated people living together.
Right now, during the pandemic, the enforcement of this particular rule has been deprioritized.
As a Denver city planner, Andrew Webb is the face of the changes that have received 10,000 pages worth of feedback. Melissa wrote, "I simply must rent a bedroom to others unrelated so that I can literally stay above water." John and Mary said this plan would immediately reduce property values.
Every year, there are probably 100 or so 311 calls, people complaining about households of too many unrelated adults. And on average, about half of those turn out to be actual violations of the zoning code.
That's just part of the suggested changes to the city code. The more controversial section deals with residential care facilities, community corrections or halfway houses, sober living homes, and homeless shelters.
There are about 140 some total residential care facilities in the city.
This is a neighborhood map of Denver. I'll leave the neighborhood names up for another couple of seconds. I'm about to show you the areas where community corrections, or halfway houses, are currently located. They're in the center of those circles. The areas colored tan are where halfway houses could currently open. Under this proposal tonight, those tan areas grow, meaning more places where halfway houses can operate.
Earlier, we had actually proposed allowing these facilities everywhere, making the argument that, these are people served in these facilities will eventually be out in the community and no regulations will tell them where they can live.
You can imagine some of the emails. From Linda's, the answer is not by forcing your way into established Denver neighborhoods with the group living arrangements. To Ethan's, if Denverites are serious about criminal justice reform and rehabilitating offenders, then this is a great step. Quick personal story. While looking to buy a home recently, my wife and I toured a single-family neighborhood home that had about a dozen people living in it because it was a sober living facility. You wouldn't necessarily know it just from the outside, and the city has made it no secret where these places operate, Kyle. There's a map that I'm sharing on 9news.com. It shows where residential care facilities currently exist, and I would venture to guess people out there might live near one and just don't know they live near it.
Which would seem, Marshall, to be an argument for the fact that they can exist in neighborhoods, as advocates would argue.
Yeah, and I don't say that to try to shame these places. Just what you said. For all you know, it's down the street. You might be complaining about it, and it's down the street working just fine. But on the flip side, you can just see all the different places where these exist and where they could currently, or where they could exist under the proposed amendments, which could pass tonight.
Well, it is public comment time at Denver City Council, and there's a lot of talking going on tonight. We may or may not have an answer by 9, 10 o'clock. Marshall, thank you. So today's the day. Colorado's opening up vaccinations to people ages 65 to 69, along with teachers. Now, that does not mean that all those people can get a shot soon. We'll talk about why shortly. 541,000 Coloradans have a single dose of the vaccine so far. It's 9.4% of the population. 211,000, 3.7% of the population, fully vaccinated. Colorado's Hunger Games approach to vaccine distribution, where a lot of people are left to basically fend for themselves and compete against each other for a limited number of shots, that's the way of doing business was on full display over the weekend. Near the end of an SCL health vaccination event in Denver, they realized they had some extra doses left over from people who didn't show up for their appointments. So SEL reached out to Jeffco schools to see if they might be able to get a few teachers in there quickly for a vaccination. Jeffco sent a mass email to 14,000 people telling them they had an hour to get to the National Western Complex for a shot. People came racing across town, causing traffic jams. At one point, people were leaving their cars and sprinting for the vaccination site. Our Steve Steger looks at what we might learn from that debacle.
Jeffco schools should have just signed off this email with, "May the odds be ever in your favor." After all, it told 14,000 people that there were 200 doses of COVID-19 vaccine left over at the National Western Complex, and they had an hour to get there. Teachers told us they watched people sprint from cars in gridlock traffic. One told me she was run off the road trying to get there.
We received a mass rush of teachers coming in.
Megan Monkey with SEL Health helped run that clinic, a mass vaccination event for vulnerable communities that had gone well up until then.
Really were running extremely smooth, with the average patient or vaccine receiver having about a 30-minute turnaround.
Monkey couldn't tell us how many doses were actually left over from the no-shows.
You have constant flux of who shows up early, who shows up late, who doesn't show up.
All day, they'd been calling people 70 plus on their waiting list, trying to get them in. She says when they'd exhausted that, they decided to turn to the next group.
We reached out to our community partners to say, with a very targeted ask of, we have additional vaccine. Can you go to your lists of folks to get additional people here?
By now, Jeffco decided not to go with that targeted approach. After this weekend, SEL says they've learned they have to be specific with partners like school districts.
You really need to have a targeted prioritization list. And so that means taking the list of folks that are interested in getting the vaccine, aligning it with the state guideline, and then really having a very structured communication plan of how do you reach out to those that the vaccine is now available to.
This weekend, Jeffco told its staff that the reason they sent a mass email, they replied all to everyone, was out of an issue of fairness. And now they are going to create a priority list moving forward for these opportunities. Denver Public Schools told me today that they've had a priority list for a while. In fact, Kyle, that's how they're handling all their vaccinations for all of their teachers in different schools, is they're just consulting that priority list.
And because Colorado does not have a cohesive system, it's this patchwork approach, whether the patchwork is various employers, be they school districts or whatever else, whether the patchwork is different hospital providers or doctors' offices or whatever else. People are hugely dependent on the attitude of their organization, whether it's we're going to come up with layers that aren't required of us, or if their methodology is LOL, nothing matters, Hunger Games, go.
Yeah, I mean, in this case, you can't fault an organization for saying, can you get people here to put this shot in arms? Because the goal is always to get this shot out to as many people as possible. But I think a lot of people are hoping that this might be a wake-up call to all of those employers in town who may be in one of these priority categories, like, hey, maybe you should talk to your employees about who wants to get a shot and where they might fall on that list.
Yep. I think that not doing so is actually mean. I want to talk about that here in a second. Thank you, Steve. The vaccine rollout is inevitably going to be a stressful process. Though we need to acknowledge that some of the people who are making decisions lately are choosing to make it more stressful on some Coloradans. Email blasting 14,000 school staff to send them scrambling across town for 200 vaccine doses was a choice. It created extra stress and heartbreak for people. The governor opening up vaccinations to people 65 plus today, prior to getting halfway through the people 70 plus, and without giving those older Coloradans any priority at this point in the larger pool. That was a choice that created extra stress and heartbreak for people. The state downplaying how long it's going to take to get groups vaccinated makes people feel like they're outliers or they're doing something wrong if they can't get an appointment. As a choice to lowball the amount of time it's going to take people to get vaccinated. It's a choice that creates extra stress and heartbreak. Now listen, I don't think that anybody's making these decisions maliciously. They're made in the name of optimism or opportunity. but creating a system where people are scrambling to and fro and spending weeks frustrated when clear expectation setting might have avoided that. Those are choices that are adding extra unnecessary stress into an already stressful situation. How about some good news? So happy to tell you tonight that there are fewer than 500 Coloradans in the hospital with COVID-19 right now. 474 patients, up a tick from the day before, but this time last week we had 556 patients in hospitals. Let's talk about the positivity rate. Our positivity rate yesterday was 4.7%. Our weekly average continues to slowly go down, now at 4.2% over the last 7 days. Each Monday, we wrap up your latest Word of Thanks micro-giving campaign, and it is amazing what you do again and again every Wednesday through Monday. $2.8 million raised for Colorado's nonprofits since last summer. Your latest effort last week, more than $40,000 raised for the Laboratory to Combat Human Trafficking. Your donations is going to allow that nonprofit to expand its training programs across our state. They're the pros at teaching people how to spot and stop human trafficking. So, what now? You have built this engine for generosity. So where in Colorado do you want to take it? What should we do with it next? Send me your ideas. Email next@9news.com. High schoolers on the run with purpose in each step. The next step for a huge piece of open land in Denver begins this week. Some in the community are convinced they know what's going to happen, and they don't like it. That's next. Park Hill Golf Course, that land, it's valuable. Everybody agrees on that. This week will be the first meeting in a long string for a group that's working to determine the future of that big old piece of largely empty land right off of Colorado Boulevard, south of I-70. A group that's been trying to preserve it as open space is out in front of this week's meeting saying the city's already decided to develop it. A developer, whose name I will get to in a moment, bought the land in 2019 for $24 million. Westside Investment Partners is the name of the group. They're not in the golf business, so the course is going to go. City Council would have to remove a conservation easement signed in 1997 in order to make that happen. The group Open Space Denver wants to keep the land as is. They want some nearby land developed instead. They're convinced that Mayor Michael Hancock's coziness with developers means that this is already a done deal. Those 155 acres will be developed.
This is when the mayor's administration works to move its pro-development agenda forward by creating a sham process where there's already a determined outcome, and then they work backwards from there. I've witnessed the mayor's administration do some very brazen things over the last decade or so, but the way they are moving forward by trying to give away the last big chunk of open space we have to a land speculation company takes the cake.
This 27-member steering committee meets for the first time tomorrow to discuss the future of the land. This group of community members, as well as the developers, will then make a recommendation to City Council.
Cloudy and chilly tonight, but it's about to get a whole lot colder. Temperatures were all over the place today. 30 at DIA, 40s in South Metro, and mid-30s in downtown Denver. It's going to get warmer tomorrow before the Arctic cold settles in. Arctic high pressure is going to drive that cold air in for the second half of the week and the weekend. We've got a little light snow coming in as well. Right now, all the accumulating snow will fall in the northern and central mountains. Tomorrow, there's a winter weather advisory out, Rocky Mountain National Park and Rabbit Ears Pass. Partly cloudy, cold, and 12 will be your low in Denver. Partly sunny, 40 tomorrow, low 40s on Wednesday, and then the cold air settles in. There's a chance for light snow on Friday right into the weekend, with weekend highs in the teens and lows below zero. Get ready.
Tonight's next question comes from a viewer named Latricia. After a year of record-breaking wildfires in Colorado, Latricia's curious to know if there's a group in charge of removing dead trees from forests, dead trees that could fuel future wildfires. That's a very good question, Latricia. Landowners are responsible for removing those dead trees. Colorado State Forest Service told us that they'll work with property owners to clear out fire fuels, but it's their deal if you own the property. The Forest Service removes dead trees from state and federal lands, which is just an enormous task. Depending on the condition of the wood that they remove, they might burn it, they might sell it to construction companies, or they might recycle it into something called biochar. I had to Google it. It's a soil additive. Fire season, we know now, is a year-round event in Colorado. We saw those two large grass fires yesterday. Winter fires tend to be like in open spaces, down at lower elevation, maybe closer to the Front Range rather than up at altitude where we see a lot of summer fires. This time of year, there's plenty of snow up there.
My goal is to raise as much money as possible to fight blood cancers like leukemia and lymphoma.
He watched as leukemia took his dad from him. Now he runs for himself, for his family, for other kids. Hopefully won't have to experience the same loss.
It's just hard to see someone you care about go through something like that.
And now his friends are running with him. Next. An Arapahoe High School junior is running toward a goal. He wants to help eradicate the disease that took his dad.
So we're trying to have people get out and run and then raise some money.
I'm Sam Thompson. I'm a junior at Arapahoe High School.
So my name's Tatum O'Shea and I'm a junior at Arapahoe High School. And I have a really supporting community from this school and I have a lot of running friends, so I figured why not try to raise money in a way that I know how to.
And my goal is to raise as much money as possible to fight blood cancers like leukemia and lymphoma.
Right now I am hosting a virtual 5K. It's called the Just Dug It virtual 5K. Sam's campaign team is called Just Dug It in memory of his father, Doug Thompson.
I asked team members like Tatum to join my team, and then they've been committed really well to helping me reach my goal, and a lot more than I expected to fight something that is dear to me because I lost my father to leukemia.
Well, it's just hard to see someone you care about go through something like that.
He was diagnosed with leukemia, acute myeloid leukemia, in 2013, and he passed away in December of 2018 after a 5-year battle, and he helped raise money through LLS when he was a survivor.
Sam and his family are really strong and they've gone through a lot, but they keep pushing, and Sam's working really hard to help support a cause that has impacted his family.
Well, I saw my dad raise almost $70,000 with the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, and so I kind of want to just honor him and continue his legacy of giving back to cancer research.
This has been a long time coming, and he's put in a lot of work, and I really hope that he succeeds because he's doing an awesome job.
Appreciate Sam and Tatum sharing their story through the lens of our photojournalist, Corky Scholl. Next viewer named Jeff emailed about 5 minutes ago with a great question. Which state is doing their vaccine rollout the best, and why? The answer next. Jeff writes in and says, which state is doing their vaccine rollout best and why? Jeff, that is a great and complicated question. A lot of the states that are having success are more rural. Some have very different demographics than Colorado, but there are a number of different states with all kinds of demographics that are seeing a higher percentage of vaccinated people than Colorado. Specifically to your question, who is doing it better? Best in the country is Alaska. And who's also doing better than Colorado? West Virginia, New Mexico, Connecticut, North Dakota, Oklahoma, District of Columbia, South Dakota, Virginia, Delaware, Wisconsin, Arkansas, Maine, Vermont, Hawaii, Wyoming, Oregon, Montana, Kentucky, Minnesota, North Carolina, Washington, Louisiana, and Michigan. Those are all the states doing better than us. I didn't just run out of time.